what motivated you back in 2011 to start Architecture Women New Zealand?
Okay. So many things, but I can describe it with this small sort of story where I found myself walking through St Luke's Mall with a graduate, she'd actually been working for 7 years, Julie Wilson, and she was an ex-student of mine, and she'd been working and also had 3 children by that stage. She had a very young family, so we were pushing prams and trying to have a conversation. The point of saying that is that she was saying that she's leaving the profession. She just couldn't see a way from where she was at that moment towards re-entry into the profession. And it just occurred to me that I had seen this story played out in front of my eyes. By that stage, I'd been teaching for about 15 years, so I'd started to see a pattern of around 7 years after graduation, just the loss of talent, really.
So you were seeing patterns and you wanted to counter them?
Yeah.
There's a project that needs to be done on women in architecture and gender equity, because there was a kind of prehistory in some very important work that had been done and published in 2005 by Paula Whitman, which was a kind of major survey and study called Going Places, the Career Progression of Women in Architecture. And very sadly, Paula became ill and subsequently died, and her work was not completed, really. The policy recommendations that she'd made in that report, which were all very specific, very sensible, and I would have thought quite achievable, had never actually been carried out. So there was an incomplete project. It seemed to me that we could do more research and that we could also try and be quite have effect in putting her earlier recommendations into action in the world.
We also had not only knew about Paula's work, but we realised there were numerous reports, but going back to the 80s, on women in the profession, undertaken in association with the Institute or by the Institute, and that all made outstanding recommendations.
Yep. And all been shelved.
Nothing had happened with any of them, and so we just didn't want that to happen to our work, and so we can't be experts on everything, but we can try and make space for other voices, and we can try and amplify other voices, and we can have conversations where we can learn from each other, and there are other fantastic groups doing great work, and so how can we work together as allies rather.
But isn't it great that we've set up, you set up a platform and then you get other people to challenge you, and we're constantly looking to be challenged, because I don't think at any point we've said we have the right answers for everything.
Yeah. Well, exactly, and I suppose, questions of intersectionality and exclusivity are always coming up, and we're very aware that we don't want Parlour to be, as Justine says, something to make life more comfortable for middle-class white ladies, which is, one could say that was a valid criticism. So we have to work actively to broaden our approach. But of course, it goes further than that as well, because we've had discussions about changing our name, which is Parlour Women Equity Architecture.
Which is the same for us, because we've just spoken about how we're not about architects and we're not about women, but we're called Architecture and Women. So it's a great way to...
Country, I think.
Yeah, in New Zealand, yeah.